From Jerusalem, Israel, this is From the Midwest to the Middle East, the podcast that explores everything new in U.S. and Israeli economy. Here's your host, Philip Stein.
Very excited today to be, again, a podcast in a little different direction, a different subject, which I'm always looking for new stuff. And I have a very special guest, Shlomo Schreibman, who I've known his family for many, many years. He has an MA in organizational psychology, and he has worked with some of the largest companies in Israel, including the biggest banks like Bank Hapoalim, as well as known family businesses. And he works with creating strategies, particularly in the human factor, covering areas of employee motivation, conflict resolution, and strategic personal planning for executives. But particularly what I want to talk to him today is about family businesses, transitioning, and I think it's something that is very relevant to a lot of people in this country. And I'm looking forward to the conversation. Welcome, Shlomo.
Thank you. Thank you, Philip, for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Okay, Shlomo, two weeks ago, I happened to be in Singapore, and which I could do a podcast just on that, maybe one of these days. And I read the following headline: Father-son feud plunges Singapore's richest clan into crisis. Now, we all know that crises regarding family business are not limited to the ultra-rich, but please tell my listeners about your work and how a family business can avoid appearing in such headlines.
Sure, sure. I think I read something about that, how the son tried getting his dad off the board and his
Right,
dad was
right,
suing his son, which is a crazy situation.
right.
So
Exactly.
I'm originally from New York, grew up in Israel, married happily in Beit Shemesh with 4 kids. And my background's in psychology, studied psychology for over 8 years, and then I managed a marketing firm for 10 years. So the blend between growing businesses and focusing on the human people aspects of businesses is very dear to me. And in recent years, I've been focusing on family businesses. And yeah, like you said, every business can have crisis. It's not just the rich family businesses. Every business without leadership will have a crisis.
Mhm.
Um, and usually with family businesses, it is business on steroids because there's so many emotions involved. Yeah, I don't know that case specifically in Singapore, but I could imagine there were issues between the son and dad way before that happened. Uh, Feeling appreciated, feeling trusted, taking on responsibility, ego,
Yeah,
and
part of the backstory was this father did turn. He's the guy in his 80s. He did turn management over to the son, and the son made a very bad investment. Okay,
mhm.
then the father wanted to reassert himself, and you know.
Oh wow, wow. So that highlights another issue of having when bringing in other family members, there needs to be a nice amount of planning ahead of time and a succession plan ahead of time.
Mhm.
And I don't know the specific case, but maybe this kid may have not been the right fit, or maybe he made a mistake and his dad was just something was there. But clearly, just the point was that there's emotions in every business. With family business, there's so many more emotions. In psychology, a lot of the fundamentals are whatever we experienced in our childhood comes out at a later age, and in a family business that's just on steroids, so it needs to be treated.
So you're in your case, you're particular. In other words, your company. Maybe tell a little about your company and how how you work with let's say founders, or I assume
Sure.
that's who engages you, correct?
Yeah,
Owners.
we're usually working with the leadership of the companies, either the founders or the next generation. It's with the C-level people in the company. Um, Usually companies that are doing between $5 and $100 million a year. Um, And we have a group of about 12 mentors slash business psychologists on our team. Some of them are based in Israel, some around the world. And
Uh-huh.
we work with different businesses around the world, mainly family businesses. And we didn't mean to work just with family businesses. It started off as general consulting, organizational psychology for
Mhm.
businesses. We just realized that family businesses need it the most. And I've been in marketing for many years, and I found that you always want to be in an area where people need it. And it's not good to have. It's we are drowning, and this is not working, and this is affecting our Seder meal. So being at a place where you could add a lot of value was important to us. So this is the company we're called My Turning Point, and And so I'm with this company, helping family businesses.
All right, so my experience, I've worked with a lot of companies myself. Founders, founders of companies, I think you'll agree with me, tend to have different skills than next generation managers who may have an MBA from prestigious schools. Yet those management skills, which tend to be a key for companies to grow from those, seed days. But how does one bridge those different skill sets and allow them to coexist in the same
Yeah, Philip, great question. That's often a source of conflict. The founder who brought the company from zero to something, as they call it, 0 to 1, he brought certain skill sets of entrepreneurial skill sets and sales and developing something, and he may not work with the best technology or using social media for growth or great hiring processes. He's just been hustling and bringing it to something, and then the next generation who maybe got an MBA or learned some new tools may want to bring that, and that's often a source of conflict. And I think the first stage is just recognizing what everyone brings to the table. There's great value in the old way of doing things, and there's a reason the company got to a certain level. I mentor different people today that are they're using social media for growth, and they're forgetting completely about the old way of doing things, like the nose to nose
uh-huh.
networking,
Uh-huh.
selling. That's lacking. And on the opposite side, you have people that are managing their whole pipeline and business on a piece of paper without a CRM or without new technology tools. So first of all, just acknowledging what everyone could bring to the table, and perhaps having the first generation mentoring the second generation on the things they've learned, and that's really needed. That mentorship is really needed. And then the second generation, building trust step by step. So no father is just going to say, "All right, kid, you're in charge from now on." But if that kid could be, it doesn't have to be a kid. It's often someone in their 70s, someone in their 40s. Be like, "Okay, you take over a certain project management component, a certain operation component, and when you bring that to light, and you hire this consultant that works out, then we'll work on the next thing." And if that
Hmm.
trust is built step by step, the company could bring each strengths and grow together. But that is often a sense of conflict if there's different ways of doing things and they clash. So having that dialogue is important.
I'm thinking of a very large company, well-known trademark people see around Israel, that we do some work for, and they have a policy. It's a bunch of brothers. They do not allow Gen 2 to work for the company. So, from your experience, what are the pros and cons of parents, children, siblings, cousins working in the same business?
So there's a great reason for that. I've heard many companies with that policy. I've also heard that sometimes they make yotze min haklal. They have
Okay,
you know
okay.
what's the word in English? Um,
Exception to the rule.
Exception to the law, right? Exception to
Right.
the rule. But there's a reason for that. Second generation success rate is like 30%. Third generation is almost single digits. So
Wow.
you want to make sure that the business isn't just a nepotism machine where they're not set up for success and it's all just ways to give jobs to their family members. There's reasons for that. And having a family business environment has cons. Often there's ambiguity on the different roles, and there's a rule in general with leadership is you coach them in or coach them out. You can't really do that with your wife, or with your mother, or with your son. So there's a
Uh-huh.
big problem with family businesses, and that's on the con side. On the pro side is we all have a certain network and we're looking to hire. It's often people we know or people we know that know someone. And I've seen many businesses where there is no one better in the world than that husband and wife working together or those two
Uh-huh.
brother-in-laws working together. And there's a certain level of loyalty and skills that they bring that others don't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and working with each other already so they kind of know what to expect, so expectations are managed, and so there's great pluses in that. So I wouldn't rule it out, but I would say it needs to be an exception. Like there's so business could be so complicated as is that you don't want to as default have more family members come in, but you wouldn't it's not right to rule it out because there could be amazing light coming. I've just visited a multi-million dollar company in New Jersey, two brother-in-laws. They would not be able to succeed without each other. and it was a great shidduch, a great matchmaking. So it would be a shame to rule that out. But there's also potential conflicts, and putting that also talking about that up front. Again, this is everything we're going to talk about in family business. I think is true to every business. It's just family business on steroids. So every business you want to talk about up front. What does success look like? What are everyone's expectations from the business, personal?
Mhm.
Just in family businesses, there's no way out. Like there's if it doesn't work out, it gets sour. It really reflects the whole family. So you want to manage those expectations and be like, okay, if it doesn't work out, what does it look like so we're still in good shape?
Great answer. Um, Looking at not moving away from the family members who work there, but assuming one has a successful family business, the founder gets to a certain stage. Obviously, you want to bring in non-family members. You want to bring in, what I would call outside talent. But how do you retain what's is there any roadmap to retain, you know, talent that doesn't have the family gene or the bloodline to stay there?
Great question. So, first of all, there's research showing that companies that do bring in outside family members are more successful. They have
Hmm.
like better strategic decision making and they happen to be more successful. It makes sense, right? So, you definitely want to do that. You need to show an example of that. So, I was working with an organization now, they have about 70 employees, and it is very clear to everyone in the organization that the CEO and the heads of the company will not be someone from the outside. And for some of the mid to senior level management, that is really annoying. Like the fact that they know that they won't get an equal shot at having a C-level position is really annoying. And it just may not be a good fit for retaining that top level talent. It could be a good fit for people that have more of a followership sense,
Hmm.
not a leadership sense, meaning they're happy being the number twos and the number fives, but that's a problem. On the flip side, there's organizations that purposely put someone outside. I actually just worked with a nonprofit. He's a rabbi, and he wants his son to take over, but he told his son, "You're reporting to the COO." And I want to make sure that we're not all about nepotism. And we have, this is a person that's a professional. I trust him. You guys work together. I want you to have a senior role, but this guy's also involved. And it's not easy for the son. The son would expect to get favorable rights,
Right, right.
but it is important for the whole, it's important for donors, for investors. It's important for the whole organization to see that there is a path to succeed and it isn't just, there is some objectivity. It probably will never be 100% objective, but there is some objectivity. So showing an example of others that could succeed in the company and could progress is really important. And then other people want to work there. But if everyone knows that, it's just going to be the mothers and the fathers and the uncles, people won't want to work there.
That makes a lot of sense. So my next question, actually, you referenced it in our pre-call or maybe at the very beginning about Pesach, but I'll go back a little person when I was a young boy, mamash single digits. I had a grandfather and a great uncle who were in business together. They were in the wholesale egg and poultry business in Chicago. They had come from Europe. Uh, and to this day, I have never heard screaming at each other as these two guys when they went at it. Okay.
Oh
But
boy.
then every Shabbat they sat next to each other in shul. Okay. So it was like a phenomena. So I'm thinking about soon we'll be celebrating Pesach. We just finished Purim. Well, what advice do you give to family business to be able to work together and still enjoy each other's presence at the family Seder?
That's a great question. There's a great need to separate work from life, especially today. I have a rule in my dinner table: no smartphones. And with family businesses, it's really hard because the business is on your mind all day. It's the family business; it can't fail. And it's a great question. Um, I'll share first a thought about Pesach in general. I gave a class at Hebrew University not Hebrew, at Ariel University about this.
Okay.
And there's a different perception when it comes to being happy at work and having motivation at work. Um, there's in Pesach we talk about avodat parach, right? Like labor, hard labor. And when usually people imagine hard labor, they're imagining hard labor. Like picking up heavy rocks. And that's like the definition of like hard labor today. Like, very aggressive work that if you don't do it, you get penalized. And, that's the definition today.
My
But when
late
you
my
look,
late mother used to say, if you don't do your homework, you end up digging ditches. That was her line. Okay.
and that was like the consequence, or that was your punishment?
No, that would be what I would end up doing in life
That was the consequence.
if I didn't do my
Okay.
homework. Okay.
Okay. So that would be so digging ditches. So when you look at it like on the Jewish perspectives on avodat parich, it's actually not hard physical labor. It is work that doesn't suit you or that has
Oh,
no meaning, right? So
right.
it's like if you give a macho man to sew or to knit, that's avodat parich. And or if you tell someone um, to dig a hole and then just cover it up, dig a hole, cover it up, like Sisyphus. That would be also avodat parach. So it's not so much physical work.
I got it.
Whereas, so that is like work that doesn't have meaning. You're wasting time. It doesn't fit you. Whereas work that does create motivation is work that you feel a sense of progress, even if it's like a small thing. So Professor Dan Ariely, he has this research about like if you're creating Lego and it stays full and no one breaks it, you'll feel more motivation to do more of those. And so just having a sense of progress, which is very important for family businesses. Often they're stuck in their old way of doing things and feeling like there's no progress. That's important. But just to answer your questions, how do you make sure there's no conflicts that, no shouting at the Seder? So there needs to be some sort of separation, maybe a rule like, hey, no business at the Shabbos meal or Seder meal.
Uh-huh.
But I'll say also maybe a step before is we practice this a lot at Turning Point and educating others to do it is practicing gratitude. And one of the things that have the biggest effect on happiness and on employee motivation is feeling appreciated. And if before the Pesach Seder, if every leader could kind of go to the different team members, family members, different team members, and say like, "Hey, I really want to acknowledge the work you did over there. It was really meaningful. It had a big impact on the business. I appreciate, your new initiative or your desire or your smile or whatever it is." That already sets a good tone for the Seder. So even if there is some tension, there's some making up on the other side. Um, so to summarize, keep having some no work talking at the
Okay.
Seder
Good.
is,
Good.
step one, but having a pre-positive conversation before could also help. Having a normal Seder meal.
All right, I'm going to turn to hopefully the demographic of my listening audience, the younger listeners. And I want to know advice you might give to a young listener who may have just completed university or college and has a choice. They can go out to work in the corporate world, or they could join a family company. What would you advise them?
Great question. I heard once great advice from Ellie Groner. I think he's my cousin.
Sure, sure, of
So
course.
he said always make sure that your skill sets are transferable. So wherever you're at, make sure that you have enough value that you created that you could transfer to another place. So if it's a family business that is like not structured, crazy expectations, there's no training, not a healthy place to work at, maybe it's not a good fit.
Hmm.
But I'll say just on the flip side, often family businesses could be an amazing place to grow at because um, in a very corporate place, you're doing one thing. And in a smaller family business environment, you could learn a lot and you could add a ton of value. So you could learn about operations, marketing, products, sales, all of that before your colleague at the corporate area learned any of those well. So, and you could be given more responsibilities, you could build relationships that you may not have in other places. So if you have the opportunity to be at a family business where you could do that, you could build certain muscles and either those could be relevant for there or for another company. I would go to a family business if it's
Yeah,
a place.
it's
Yeah, go
fast.
ahead.
No, no, I'm thinking one of my daughters went to Ariel before it was a university, whatever it was, Michelet,
Before 2008.
and she got a degree in communications. And I remember most of her class, were working as yoga instructors or wait, after their degree. It was hard to break in, and I had a position, and she came to work for me. And we started with I told her the first day, I said, you should stay here as long as you're learning something. But the minute you aren't learning, you don't feel you're learning anything more,
Exactly.
Go fly. And
Exactly.
she today has a very successful business in branding and it's
Amazing.
so it's interesting. I didn't think that deeply as you're giving the answer, but I think you're right. She did have an opportunity that she might, if she'd gone to work for an advertising agency, maybe she
She would
just,
have a very specific role, and
right,
she wouldn't have the opportunity to learn different things.
right, right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So if listeners want to learn more about your company or to be in touch with you, how can they find out?
So we're in Israel, so usually people just WhatsApp you. So I
Okay.
won't, but you could go on our website. It's called myturningpoint.com. And
Okay.
so we have different tools there they could use, different assessment tools for family businesses or for personal happiness and productivity and things like that. Or just on LinkedIn, Shlomo Schreibman. Glad to connect with anyone.
All right. Well, thank you, Shlomo, for taking the time and wishing you already, it's still almost a month, but Chag Kasher v'Sameach. I'll be the first one to say that. It's the beginning of the season. And thanks again. Very interesting.
Philip, it was great being here, and thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed our podcast. Feel free to visit us at www.pstein.com.